Tiff, I apologize. Talking about the Bible when I'm talking about torture.
Okay, there's torture in the Bible.
Nope, good to know. I'll read it.
So, like I said, the Old Testament is before Jesus, so Genesis means in the beginning, and the first 5 books are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, and those are basically in chronological order, and they are known as the Book of Moses. They all lay down the law, and that's what they're known as. They're the law books. So those are where the 10 Commandments come from. And then you have, so then you have, those are the law, and then we have the historical part of the Bible, which is telling about the history of the Israelites and their journey to the Promised Land. And those are all, again, Moses was going to lead. I know it's a little more in-depth, the book, than what I was hoping to get into, but Moses is the one, if you guys don't know, who split the Red Sea. And so these are just kind of the history of how they got to the land. And then next we have the poetic book, and these kind of was split up, so I had to make 2 boxes. But they are just they're by David. He is another man who served God, and before that he was a king, and he was really brutal, and he killed a ton of people, but they are very pretty, very much poems, obviously, and they are a little easier to read. A lot of stories in the Bible are parables or they're metaphorical, so you can't really take everything literally. And then after the poetic parts, we have the prophets, which, if you don't know what prophets are, they prophesy or they predict, and these are all prophets that prophesied something that came to light in the New Testament or is yet to come. So a lot of people prophesied Jesus and the coming and the resurrection and the crucifixion. And then we have the New Testament, which a lot of people know the 4 first books in the New Testament are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they are essentially the story of Jesus, and they're all different accounts from the people who are named, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And they tell the story of Jesus, but a little bit differently each time. So each book is meant to give account to the story to certain people. So you may read one and get a lot out of it, but you read another and you get something totally different out of it. Then we have the history. This is Acts. A lot of church, including mine, a lot of churches are based on a lot of stuff that is set in Acts. And this is basically the book after Jesus was crucified and resurrected. If you don't know what resurrected means, it means brought back from the dead. And then we have letters, which are written to churches. So all of these names are churches. There's the Roman Church, the Corinthian, and then they're all kind of abbreviated to names. And they're letters from Paul, who is another apostle, which is one of the original 12 disciples of Jesus. These are, again, letters from Paul, but they're wrote to individuals. And then we have Hebrews is part of that one. Sorry, I must have skipped it. But it's written to Jewish Christians. And these are, again, prophecy. These are letters written to certain churches or people. And these are essentially written by the people it names off. So the first one's James, second one's Peter. First and second are written by Peter. They're just different letters. The same thing with John. And then there's Jude. And then Revelation is written by John. And it is basically a whole entire prophecy. And it talks about how Jesus is to come again. And he wrote it while he was on an island. And he was exiled, actually. So that's just kind of the idea of the Old Testament and the New Testament and the books that are in it. Then at the bottom we have the table and weights. A lot of weights and measurements in the Bible are still in like cubites or meters. They're not in our measurements. They are in measurements that are used obviously in the East. So they kind of give an idea of what that would look like in relation to what we would say they are. So this is kind of a picture of a concordance. In the back of the Bible, there's a concordance, And I know you won't be able to see it, that's why I have a picture of it. But essentially, this is kind of like an index. It gives you, if you want a topic or a certain word in the Bible, there's a concordance in the back usually that this one's, the word is strengthening, and 7 is how many times it may occur in this certain Bible. And then also there is another word, strong, which can be used in place of strengthening. And then on the side you see the 2 SA and the AC. Those are books in the Bible, and each book has a chapter, and each chapter has verses. So these are abbreviated, and it means 2 Samuel 3:6, which means the third book, or the third chapter in the 6th verse. So it gives you kind of a blurb of where it's at, and you see that there's just an S between Ben and his. That word is strengthening. So in the Bible, there's also red letters, usually in the New Testament. It's kind of hard to see, that's why there's a picture up there. But this is Jesus talking. They're direct words from either God or Jesus. And that kind of gives you an idea of who's talking. And that's kind of a helpful thing to do when you are reading the Bible. I have certain types of Bibles here. This is a life book. It's really just blurbs out of the Bible with notes in it, and it helps. Usually they're split up into teens and adults and children. It kind of just helps you have an idea of what direct relation it has to your life in every day. And then this is a NIV. It's kind of beat up. It's well loved. But NIV is New International Version. It's a direct translation, but in a easier reading style. So this is usually, this is what I read most of the time, but this is actually not my Bible. I borrowed it from somebody else. But it is definitely easy to read. It doesn't use words like thou, and this is thine, but that's what the King James Version uses. And then there are certain, in your concordance, it kind of skips back. You see in the middle column here, there are black words, and this has to do with the concordance. And when you read the Bible, there will be letters. They're you can kind of see them like I's and A's, and it depends on what one you're reading. But it'll have footnotes, and those are other verses that you can go to in reference to what you just read. So if you read something in Matthew, there might be a footnote for Isaiah, which is a prophet, and you can go to Isaiah and read about it. And it kind of, you can, by doing that, you can go all over all the time in the Bible and just get to research what you're reading. And that is basically how you read the Bible.
Cool.